Last night, Democrats invaded New Hampshire when 5 candidates held town halls to make their case about why they should be your next president. And the most controversial moment came, apparently, from Bernie Sanders. Take a look.
If somebody commits a serious crime, sexual assault, murder, they're going to be punished. They may be in jail for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, their whole lives. That's what happens when you commit a serious crime. But I think the right to vote is inherent to our democracy. Yes, even for terrible people.
You're writing an opposition ad against you by saying you think the Boston Marathon bomber should vote not after he pays his debt to society, but while he's in jail. You sure about that?
I do believe. Look, you know, this is what I believe.
So, is he taking voting rights a bit far there, or is there merit in this conversation?
The thing about it is that if you're going to go picking and choosing who should get to vote while you're in jail, I don't see that's a practical thing to do. Oh, you did this, and no, you didn't do that, so you get to vote. No, you can and you can't. Either you have to let everybody do it or nobody, seems to me. It's not practical.
Yeah.
And his position is that even though you heard what he said, even though you are serving your time and you're being punished, that does not take away your right to vote. But, you know, it'll be used in a campaign ad against him because it doesn't sound good.
No,
it really doesn't.
No, you're right about that. I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it sounds crazy to anyone who is thinking about someone that's in prison for committing heinous crimes. And when you commit a crime, usually certain rights are taken from you. And I'm all for when you get out of prison.
That's what you're in jail for, though.
That's what you're in jail for.
Yeah.
So when you're out of prison, I'm all for helping people succeed after that.
Should they
help
vote
them
when they're
get
out,
jobs.
do you think?
I think I'm with Pete Buttigieg. I love Mayor Pete. And the challenge when there's so many candidates running is when you get Bernie Sanders in there taking such an extreme stand on something, they all have to answer that question, and they have to have a stand on it. Kamala Harris clearly didn't know where she stood yet on it, but Buttigieg was very clear. He said, no, I'm not for voting if you are in prison. He said, when you get out, I feel differently about that. I feel like people have served their time and then they have a right to vote. I'm where he is on it. But I think the idea of voting while you're in prison, that is a very slippery slope. I mean, people are in there for all kinds of things, and you commit a crime, you shouldn't be able to vote in prison.
It's really a constitutional question because what the Constitution says under the 14th Amendment is that it's a state issue. It's a state-by-state issue. And in fact, I think Bernie's probably speaking to his experience because in Vermont, people in prison are allowed to vote. And I think a lot of people don't know that. And about 48 states up until 2017 in Maine. And in 48 states, most people, even after they got out of prison, were not allowed to vote. Right. And just recently, I think it was 2017 or 2018, now 15 states plus D.C. allow people to have the right to vote. Right. So I don't know that Bernie's position is appropriate. I would agree once you're in prison, I don't know that the right to vote is appropriate. But my concern is the laws of our country are disproportionately applied to people of color. And so there's real disenfranchisement of the African-American vote, of the Latino vote. So you're talking about, 6.1 million African-Americans that the vote is taken away from.
Well, there are currently 1.5 million.
That's a different conversation, though, and I think that's a valid one.
I think it's part of the same conversation.
So I will say that I got up at 5:30 this morning. I couldn't sleep last night, and I woke up really early, and I saw this clip. And I will say, talking about prison reform and talking about low-level crimes like Alice Marie Johnson getting let out of prison, I believe a woman like that should have the right to vote for all intents and purposes. But for Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris to go on TV and say that the Boston terrorist deserves any rights in this country after killing 3 people and injuring 264 in 2013, I think is disgraceful. RNC turned that into an ad. It is not hard to say people who commit acts of terror in this country should not only be punished, but God forbid they should have any rights that any of us had, or someone who commits a low-level crime like smoking pot or getting caught with a dime bag of pot and going to jail. It is not hard to put lines between terrorists and people who commit low-level crimes. And I was very upset about this morning because just one second. If Democrats want to drag everybody this far left, this is why people like me are so upset and so disenfranchised sympathize with how extreme this is. It's not hard to say the Boston terrorist was a psycho lunatic who is a threat not only to national security, but shouldn't be allowed the right to vote in any elections. It's not that hard.
Very clear, though, Kamala Harris did not say that. Kamala Harris said
we should have a conversation.
We can have a conversation about it, but I think we need to make it very clear.
And that's fine. That's not good enough for me.
Say that.
That's not good enough for me. Kamala, that's not good enough for me.
She was a prosecutor in California. This is clearly something that she has worked on
they
before.
Have discussed.
And I feel like she's thought about it before.
Well, but
does anyone here think a terrorist should have the right to vote?
Well, here's what I'm going to say. If they let this terrorist out because he served his time, he gets his, if he's an American citizen, why is your mouth open like that?
Because he killed people.
Yes, lots of people do this.
He's a terrorist. He's a radicalized terrorist.
Our Constitution says if you've done your time, you have, we hope, been reformed, you've been changed, you've been grown. If they let him out, that means they feel his time is up and he gets to become the American citizen
He should never be let out. He's a radicalized terrorist.
Well, but you asked me about the votes. He's probably never going to get out. But I'm saying...
Simple question. Does anybody at this table think anyone who's committed an act of terror that killed 3 Americans and injured 264 should have the right to vote? Anybody at this table think yes?
Well, no, that's not the way to ask that question. No. Because this is 2 different conversations.
It's not to me.
I get that. But it is to me. And let me remind you why. If you've done your time, that's what prison reform is about. If they let this man out, they are saying he has been reformed, we have fixed him, he's been
rehabilitated.
We have rehabilitated him.
He's met his debt to society.
That's what...
I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any of you, and I understand this is the view.
But we are talking about if he were to be let out.
He should never be let out.
That's not the conversation.
If he were,
that's not what you asked.
Because I said low-level crimes. I said low-level crimes like Alice Marie Johnson.
But then you said, who here thinks that this should happen if he gets out?
I'm sorry. 11% rise in terror. I mean, we talk about the rise in terrorism and violent crimes in this country all the time. And the idea, I'm telling you that I am open to women like Alice Marie Johnson, who I think we all can agree was put into prison for too long. When you are talking about terrorists,
how about
the idea
you're missing the point. Hold on. Yes, you're missing the point because when you talk, you keep saying if they let him out. Well, yes, if they let him out, he gets those rights back. That's what we're talking about.
I don't agree that if this terrorist were let out,
not get out.
But I think he should be given the death penalty. I mean, that's where I'm at with this. People who commit acts of terror on American soil.
Does this include, in your mind, domestic terrorists also?
Yes, terrorism is terror. Yes, of course.
And what about those guys who shoot schools up? That also,
they should, of course, be
child
in jail.
molesters. Child molesters.
It is. I'm trying to tell you. What Bernie Sanders said is going to be turned into a clip that will be. It upset me this morning.
How do you feel about the fact that people in Vermont are allowed to vote?
Abby and I didn't have brothers that served multiple times, and I didn't watch my brother deploy when he was 19 to fight this crap. To have them come here and give the right to vote.
You are missing. Wait. Hold on. Let's be realistic here. The discussion here was if he got out.
Yes.
That was the discussion.
Then I'm against it.
Even then, she's against it.
Okay. Right. That's the conversation.
So people that leave prison would not be allowed.
I don't think he would ever get out.
Well, that's why we're talking about terrorists.
Should they get the vote while they're in prison?
We're talking about terrorists. Tell me a terrorist who has committed an act that heinous that has been let out of prison.
No,
we haven't had that conversation, right? So that is
but we were talking in hypothetical.
For me, I would appreciate it if Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris said there are true monsters in this world, and true monsters for me are domestic terrorists, which these guys were. They were radicalized here. People like that not only shouldn't get the right to vote, but I don't think should have the right to have anything in this country. They killed Americans and they were radicalized, and it's a cancer in this country.
But again, people that are in Maine and in Vermont that are allowed to vote while in prison.
Maybe you think terrorism is
okay with that?
I do not.
No, you're missing. Don't do that, Megan. Don't do that because what we are chuckling at is I'm trying to get this to he's back behind you like this, and they see me trying to say it, and then Sonny started up again, and they realized that I wasn't going to get to say we'll be right back with more Hot Topics.